Building visionOS apps presents us with new architecture and design problems, but luckily we can use our existing iOS development knowledge to conquer them. So I just opened Xcode 15 Beta 2, which you should install before watching this video because Beta 1 does not include the visionOS SDK, but it is now included in Beta 2. So we will be hitting the Create New Project button here, and in the tab bar here at the top, you will see that we now have a new operating system, visionOS. And for that operating system, we can either build an app, a framework, or a static library, and we will of course go with an app. So let's select that and hit next. In here you can give your app a name. So I will say, I will call mine Vision Course, and then team and identifier. You have to set that up yourself, but there are two new options here that we can select from when creating a visionOS project. And those are the initial scene type and whether it supports immersive space and which kind of immersive space. So for the initial scene, there are two options. We can either start with a window, which is the 2D variant, or with a volume, which is the 3D variant. We will start with a window because all of this can be changed and added and modified later on. So we will be adding 3D content, but for now, let's go with a window as a starting point. And then for the immersive space, you can set this to none, which is the default, meaning that your app does not support immersive space. It will only work in a shared space on the Vision Pro headset. Or you can select mixed, progressive, or full. We will leave this as none once again, because we want to set all of this stuff up programmatically later down the line of this course. So let's hit next and select a save location for this project. All right, let me maximize the window, and then we can give it a few seconds until the preview is available, because we do have a live preview for our visionOS apps. All right, so this is the example project that Xcode has when you create a visionOS app. And as always, you have your code on the left-hand side, and then you have your live preview on the right-hand side. Let me quickly go over everything that it got auto-generated, how it translates to UI, and how we can interact with the live preview. So first of all, we have a Vision Course app file, which is just our SwiftUI abstract. And since we selected the initial scene to be a window, we are presented with a window group here. This is where you would add volumes or immersive spaces later on. We then also have our content view, which is just the initial view of the app, just as in iOS, macOS, and all the other Apple platforms. But you will notice that we're not just importing SwiftUI, we're also importing RealityKit and RealityKitContent. Now, RealityKit is something you might already know from my Code with Chris AR course, which is linked in the video description down below if you want to give that a watch. SwiftUI is obviously used for the UI, RealityKit is used for all of the 3D stuff, and then RealityKitContent isn't actually a brand new framework, it's just a package that gets auto-generated here for you. And if we have a look at the sources in here, you will see that there is just a single file defining a content bundle, or a bundle really, and then also another USDA file containing a 3D object, which is the one that we are showing right here. So this little sphere over here. So this thing over here comes from the RealityKitContent package. This is not needed in your production app. You can get rid of that when we actually play around with the visionOS SDK. So in here, quickly going over the code that got auto-generated. So you will notice that we have a single window here, which has two panels, a sidebar and a content panel, and this is just a navigation split view, as you might have already used it in iPadOS or macOS. So in the first closure of the navigation split view, you have your sidebar list, which in this case is scrollable and just has a text of items, so no buttons, no navigation links, nothing like that, just a text of item. And then on the right hand side, we have our content closure, or also called a detail closure. And in there we just have a VStack with a model 3D, which is a new view that can be used with SwiftUI and RealityKit. It displays a 3D object from RealityKit in a SwiftUI view. So in this case, our sphere from the RealityKitContent package over here. So this thing right here is presented using the model 3D view. And then the rest of that is just the usual stuff with our nice new preview macro at the bottom of the file. So let me also quickly go over how the preview works and the different interactions you can do and the setup you have to go through. So first of all, you will notice that there are 5 different modes down here. So there's the interact mode, there's the free look mode, pan, orbit, and dolly. So with interact, we can actually interact with the scene as a user would on the actual Vision Pro glasses. So where our mouse is basically where the user is looking, and where we click is basically where the user would do the little tap gesture to select an item. So I can drag and move around to scroll this list over here, and I can hover over this little area at the bottom to get that hover effect, and then I can drag that around to move the window around in 3D space. And you will notice that visionOS automatically renders a little shadow right here on the ground below the window. So that's how we can move everything around. We can then go into the free look mode. And here, if we drag around, this would simulate head movement to the sides and also up and down of the real device. Next, let's have a look at the pan tool. So with the pan tool, we can actually move around, and you can see we're actually moving in a different room right here through the walls. Up, down, left, right. Then there's also the 4th tool, which is orbit, and that allows us to spin around our SwiftUI window in this case. So another type of rotation with another center anchor basically. So we already had the first type of rotation where we rotated our head. Here we are orbiting around the content. And then there's also the last tool, which is called dolly. And with that tool, we can zoom in and out or move forward and backward in the scene. All right, so those are all of the interactions that we have. And switching back to the default mode, let's center this window again. And then you will notice that there are 2 more buttons over here. So the first one is called simulated scene. And here we have 3 different scenes: kitchen, living room, and museum. And all of them have a day and a night mode. And we can, so right now kitchen is selected, but we could switch to living room by night, and then the scene will get reloaded. And looking around here, we're now in a 3D living room scene. And let's also try out museum by day. So you will notice that that also looks completely different, just a few different scenes, so you can test your apps in different environments. And then the last button is the camera, and here you can change some camera settings. I would just leave these camera settings as they are and perhaps go back into the living room by day. I think that is a very nice environment to prototype your apps with. Alright, so that's it for this first introductory lesson. Next, we will have a look at some of the 2D UI components. And once you've done covering all of those, we will jump right into 3D apps with visionOS.